Berserker took the first clear, he said, hardly able to believe the words himself. Scavenger is still trapped in the middle of the central raid. But look at Berserker, he added, voice dropping in shock. They don't even have a single scratch on them. Not one. Hold on. Someone blurted out in confusion. Is that a Korean hunter? The director sucked in a sharp breath. Berserker is a European faction. That makes no sense. What is a Korean doing with them? The question spread quickly as the press began surging forward like sharks catching the scent of blood in the water. A blue rift. A completed first clear. The biggest story in the world was standing right in front of them. The beanie reporter immediately panicked. They're getting mobbed. I need to cut in before the rest bury them. He shoved his way through the swelling crowd with his camera crew close behind. Excuse me, sir. Just one moment for the press, please. You're Korean, right? Are you working as a mercenary for Berserker? Tell us about this victory. This is the kind of mana recap people will talk about for years. But Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo cut him off with a single icy stare that felt cold enough to freeze hell itself. Scram. The reporter stopped dead on the spot, fear instantly draining the color from his face. Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo's presence flared outward like a white tiger baring its fangs, a killing aura so intense it made the air itself feel sharp. I have no patience for insects, he said, his voice flat and merciless. He walked away without another glance, leaving the reporter rooted in the snow and trembling all over. My God, that pressure, the man muttered, barely able to breathe. Meanwhile, the rest of the media pack swarmed toward Lucy instead. Guild Master Lucy, please give us a statement about this miraculous victory. It's the upset of the century. How did you pull off something this impossible? What was the strategy? What was the secret? The questions came from every direction at once. Back off. Give her space, someone from her side shouted. Her subordinates quickly moved in and tried to form a protective perimeter, pushing back against the reporters pressing in from all sides. Lucy grabbed her head in frustration, looking like she was 1 second away from exploding. No comment, she snapped. Go bother that arrogant bastard who just walked off. Her vice captain leaned in and whispered urgently. Guild Master, please calm down. We just secured the first clear. Think about the guild's image. Lucy instantly fired back. I said no. I have absolutely nothing to claim here. Inside, her anger was boiling harder with every passing second. That bastard, Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo. He ignored the strategy, ignored the formation, and practically soloed the whole dungeon by himself. She whipped her head around so fast it startled the people nearby. Where did he go? She demanded. One guild member flinched and answered nervously. He said he was going home to change, ma'am. Lucy looked as if someone had just slapped her across the face. He did what? She barked, utterly stunned. Around her, the media vultures kept circling in desperation, chasing any scrap of a usable quote. But the real focus of the story had already disappeared like smoke. He's gone, Lucy. Lucy bristled with fury, her teeth grinding so hard, she looked ready to bite through steel. Why would he leave? He did all the work. He earned that spotlight. Does he seriously have no pride at all? He just walked away like it meant nothing. Nothing. Does he even understand he just made history? Her outburst was so raw and so loud that the crowd around her fell into stunned silence. At last, one brave person carefully spoke up. Easy, Guild Master. Maybe he had some urgent business to take care of. But that weak attempt at calming her down only poured more fuel on the fire. Urgent business? This interview alone is worth billions in guild stock value. Does that man live under a rock? She shot back, still seething. She stood there in open fury, breathing hard in the freezing air. Then, all at once, a violent mana fluctuation erupted behind them. A blinding azure light tore through the snowstorm and lit up the entire scene. A reporter suddenly screamed and pointed with a shaking hand toward the strange disturbance in the air. Look, the second gate is opening. The panic in his voice spread instantly through the crowd. It's another Blue Rift phenomenon. A wave of gasps broke out all at once. Then the Scavenger Guild emerged from the gate, their bodies battered and their gear scarred from what was clearly a brutal, hellish fight. Even so, Guild Master Namtaemin came out standing straight, bruised but unbowed, his pride still fully intact as his sharp eyes swept across the area. The reporters exploded into motion the moment they saw him. Nam Taemin, over here. Guildmaster, just one word for the press. Scavenger Guildmaster, this way. Their voices overlapped into one chaotic storm. Nam Taemin's eyes turned cold with irritation as he looked at the noisy crowd swarming around him. He clearly had no patience for the rabble. Then, in the middle of that mess, his gaze caught sight of the Berserker insignia. A nearby voice immediately called out, "MBS News here." "Congratulations on securing the second clear," someone said, trying to force brightness into the moment. Off to the side, Lucy let out a dry scoff as she watched the whole thing unfold in front of her. "Let them have the scraps," she said with open disdain. Then she turned her back on the chaos without a hint of hesitation, tossing out one last verbal bomb, as if she knew exactly how much damage it would do. "Did you catch that?" Someone blurted out in a rush. "Tell me the mic was on. Tell me all of that was recorded." Later that night, as the heavy snowfall continued to bury the land in white, the Scavenger Guild set up camp in the frozen field, their exhausted movements carrying the weight of a hard-fought battle. Inside the command tent, Nam Taemin sat with a cup of instant noodles, noisily slurping as he replayed the footage on his laptop. The glow of the screen reflected in his eyes while the steam from the noodles curled into the cold air. The headline on the replay screamed across the screen. "Global shock. Berserker takes the crown." Then Lucy's voice rang out sharply through the speakers like a blade cutting through silence. "Scavenger isn't the only predator in Korea." Nam Taemin froze on the spot. The noodles in his chopsticks snapped and fell back into the cup. Rage flickered violently in his eyes. Did she just declare war? Lucy's words stabbed straight into his pride and drove him nearly mad. "I told you, didn't I?" he muttered bitterly. She looked at me with pure contempt, like I was nothing but some pathetic little bug. She had cleared the rift first, and that arrogant line was the only thing she chose to leave for the press. Nam Kielman tried to calm him down, insisting that Berserker had only finished a fraction of a second ahead of them. But the explanation meant nothing. His words never reached Nam Taemin. The only sentence echoing over and over in his head was Lucy's insult. "Scavenger isn't the only top-tier guild in Korea." Nam Taemin's anger boiled hotter and hotter, like a volcano on the edge of erupting. "Before today, I only had a vague impression of the Berserker Guild," he spat. "But after hearing her run her mouth like that, I'm done." His expression twisted with fury. What guild in Korea would even dare compare itself to Scavenger? Damn it, I can't even eat these noodles now. He shoved the half-finished cup toward the man sitting across from him. The other man's eyes lit up at once. "Seriously? Then I won't be polite." But that joy didn't last long. It vanished almost immediately as he peered into the cup and complained, "Hey, you already ate all the good parts." In the middle of the tension, Nam Kielman spoke calmly. "I think what she meant is that they encountered another Korean player inside that rift." Nam Taemin's ears perked up at once. "Huh? Who?" His eyes narrowed. "You mean those two from the Mythology Guild? The ones ranked 41st in the world?" Nam Kielman slowly shook his head. "I don't think so. According to the latest data, they're still inside a completely different rift." Nam Taemin's expression changed in an instant, faster than a skill cooldown. Curiosity vanished and raw fury took its place. "Then who the hell could it be?" he roared. Nam Kielman fell silent for a moment, his face thoughtful as he deliberately played ignorant. "I'm not entirely sure," he said carefully. But in his heart, one possibility had already risen to the surface. A Korean player stronger than the elite of Scavenger? Only one person came to mind. Even with that suspicion, however, he chose to keep his mouth shut. Meanwhile, back at Granfell's apartment, steam poured out of the bathroom like a miniature sauna. Granfell stood there in the warmth, fresh from his bath, looking completely at ease. His body was carved with almost absurd perfection, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and sharply defined abs that looked more like sculpture than flesh. Inside that body, Lee Hoyle's soul practically rejoiced. A warm bath really is the elixir of life, he thought, basking in the comfort. This is what living is supposed to feel like. But Granfell, drying his hair with a cold and scornful expression, seemed unimpressed. How disgraceful, he thought, to find such satisfaction in something so mundane. Lee Hoyle ignored that attitude completely and sank into pure bliss. "I feel like I've actually come back from the dead," he thought, savoring the warmth lingering in his body. Now it's time to hibernate, Lee Hoyle muttered to himself with desperate sincerity. But while that internal rambling went on, Granfell suddenly stopped moving and stood there in deep thought, his eyes fixed on the bed with unsettling intensity. Lee Hoyle immediately panicked. Wait, what is it? It's not what I think it is, right? Please don't. Please just say no. But of course, Granfell did exactly what he feared. In the next moment, he activated what could only be called his inner housewife mode. Apron on, mask secured, feather duster in hand. He looked ready to wage war against dust itself. Being away even for a short while has allowed filth to accumulate, Granfell judged coldly. Inside, Lee Hoyle screamed into the void. No, 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 just let me rest, you absolute psychopath. But before long, the dishes were already sparkling. Not a single speck of dust was left anywhere in sight, and soon the rich aroma of premium tea spread gently through the apartment. Granfell sipped his tea with the calm elegance of a nobleman after completing his cleaning crusade, while Lee Hoyle could only stare in speechless disbelief. I seriously can't believe this, Lee Hoyle thought. This guy even cooked a meal, and it tastes like something straight out of a five-star restaurant. The whole situation was absurdly impressive. Incredible, he muttered. Leaving Granfell to enjoy his tea in peace, Lee Hoyle opened the system interface instead. Well, I'm not sleepy anymore anyway, he grumbled to himself, resigned to his fate. He scanned the reward list and frowned. Is this really all the loot we got? The question came out with obvious disappointment. Nothing here is especially useful right now, he concluded after a closer look. Still, level 86. Looks like I jumped up 19 levels in one shot. Even he couldn't deny that part was impressive. In this leveling Manhwa world, clearing the hardest rift should have produced much better rewards. At least, that was how it ought to work. But the danger had been extreme, and the risk of everything going wrong had been far too high. His eyes sharpened as he kept analyzing the information in front of him, sorting through every detail with growing focus. Magic uses less mana than physical skills, he reasoned. So I can cast more often, and honestly, my spells are better than most of the skills I currently have. The conclusion felt obvious the more he looked at it. Granfell's voice cut into that train of thought at once. However, the mana recovery rate is dreadfully slow. Lee Hoyle rubbed his chin helplessly. Well, there's not much we can do about that right now. We don't have any accessories or items that improve mana regeneration yet. He let out a tired breath. And from the beginning, the Demon Hunter class has been a miserable job with barely any perks. I don't even have a single passive skill tied to mana recovery. If those players hadn't been there back then, things could have gone south very fast. His mind suddenly drifted back to Lucy, and in that instant he pictured her like a rabid dog snapping at everyone around her. That aggressive woman, he thought with a grim little sigh. Still, if I ever find out exactly who those people were, I guess I should thank them properly. Then Granfell spoke again, calm and direct. It is because we are lacking. The statement hit Lee Hoyle hard enough to make him jump. Cold sweat trickled down his back as he turned all his attention toward Granfell. Lee Hoyle was never the type to back down easily. If someone underestimated him, he wanted to prove them wrong. If expectations were high, he wanted to rise to meet them and turn fantasy into reality. Then he blinked at himself. Why am I suddenly remembering the character settings I wrote for him? Granfell slowly made his next declaration with absolute certainty. The next rift will be the Count's territory. He rose to his feet so abruptly that Lee Hoyle had no time to object. We do not have time to relax, Granfell said, already moving as if the decision had been made long ago. We cannot rely on magic alone. We must also improve our martial prowess. His tone was firm, almost severe. And for today, I have already found the perfect training method. Lee Hoyle widened his eyes as the pieces started connecting in his head. Wait, those players who fought alongside us, he thought. And that short-haired girl with the twin daggers. She was the most impressive one there. As the system responded under Granfell's touch, a dangerous realization hit him. If he's planning to imitate her movements. A heavy tension seized Lee Hoyle's chest. I don't know what exactly you're planning, he thought in rising horror. But whatever it is, stop right now. Sweat rolled down his face as he watched Granfell with growing dread. Granfell stared at the system board with genuine interest, as if he had found something deeply worthwhile. The basics are of the utmost importance, he said. Meanwhile, Lee Hoyle was practically crying inside. He felt no excitement whatsoever, only the crushing certainty that disaster was coming. Granfell was not the kind of person who gave up once he had made up his mind. He tightened his apron and gloves with solemn determination. First, we wash the dishes. The moment that is done, training begins. Lee Hoyle went completely still, like a statue. Then when, he thought hopelessly, are we supposed to sleep? Sleep had never felt so precious, and at the same time, so impossibly far away. Above the city, the full moon shone brightly through the night sky, while here and there a few apartment windows still glimmered with late-night light. The streets below were nearly empty and swallowed by silence, with only one figure cutting through them, running relentlessly, without pause. Bluetooth earphones in, lost in the grind, he kept moving while the smooth voice of a midnight radio host flowed softly through the airwaves. Even though it's very late, we still have plenty of listeners tuned in tonight. How was everyone's day? Sweat dripped from his chin, but he never stopped running. Inside, Lee Hoyle was already begging for mercy. Please, just let me sleep, he cried in total desperation. But before that thought could even finish, a breaking news alert cut cleanly through the broadcast and forced Granfell to stop in place. The announcer's voice turned urgent at once, sharp with tension. Currently, 95% of the outskirts have been conquered. Very soon, the Count's territory will open for the raid. On the screen, two anchors discussed the situation with unusually grave expressions, their tone making it clear that this was no routine update. According to the information we just received, the destruction rate of the Count's territory has suddenly jumped to 60%. Even though it has not fully opened yet, at this rate, the Count's territory may collapse entirely. The words landed with frightening weight. Experts everywhere were beginning to express serious concern over the anomaly. A young man in a red hat stared down at his phone, shock written all over his face. Nearby, members of the Scavenger Guild were just as stunned, their expressions turning grim as the implications sank in. Nam Taemin, toothbrush still stuck in his mouth, had run out just to hear the report more clearly. Even in that ridiculous state, the tension in his posture made it obvious that the news had hit him hard. He clenched his teeth in frustration, barely containing his disbelief. This is ridiculous. It's only been one day, and the destruction progress is already at 60%. How is that even possible? The question hung in the cold air, heavy with anger, urgency, and the unmistakable feeling that something was going terribly wrong. Nam Kielman pushed his glasses up with an uneasy hand, and even his usually steady voice trembled with concern. The shorter the conquest time limit becomes, the stronger the monsters inside the rift grow. Nam Taemin looked genuinely shaken by that explanation. But why? He asked, stunned. Why did it suddenly start accelerating like this? Does that mean the monsters inside have already evolved and gotten stronger? Nam Taemin pressed, his face tightening. But Nam Kielman could not give him a clear answer. He frowned at the data and said quietly, I'm not sure yet. I need to reevaluate everything from the beginning. Over at the Akina Daily News camp, reporters were running around in a frenzy, making frantic calls and shouting updates over the bitter cold. Even in the freezing air, no one had the luxury of standing still for even a second. Inside the broadcast tent, the director of Akina News slammed his palm against the desk so hard it made the equipment rattle. There has to be a reason, he snapped. Monsters don't just suddenly power up like that for no reason at all. One of the reporters, clearly terrified but still desperate enough to speak, pushed back anyway. Even if you say that, how are we supposed to know? Even the analysts from the top guilds have no clue what's happening. The director's tone lowered, but it only became grimmer. Then we find the cause no matter what. This isn't just about our jobs anymore. This isn't just about the company. If that rift collapses, we're all finished, he said flatly. At that point, this stops being a news story and turns into a survival scenario straight out of a manhwa. The longer he thought about it, the more real the fear became. If those monsters spilled out of the rift, every civilian and every hunter in this sector would be massacred. Just imagining those beasts breaking loose into the open world sent a sharp chill down his spine. There would be nowhere to run, and nowhere safe enough to hide. Granfell stared at the urgent news on his phone, his face unreadable as ever, but one detail gave him away. His fist had clenched so tightly that the tension in his hand was unmistakable. Is this truly an unprecedented anomaly? Lee Hoyle thought as the pieces began to shift into place. It makes sense that nobody knows the cause if that information is buried deep inside the Arkansas. Just the thought of that cursed place darkened Granfell's expression. We need to move quickly, he concluded. Vampires are filthy creatures. Through their blood alone, they can pass dark power onto others. Count Escura has split apart his own strength, he continued, and shared those fragments with the monsters roaming the outskirts of his domain. But that is only half of the mechanism, Granfell said coldly. When those beasts die, the power they carried does not disappear. It flows directly back to its original owner. Lee Hoyle furrowed his brow as the tactical nightmare became painfully clear. The Count had intentionally distributed his power among the monsters in his territory as a kind of safety net. Granfell opened the door as his mind connected the final dots. That explains everything, he said. That is why the monsters evolved, and why the destruction rate is rising so fast. This mechanism, Granfell declared with grim certainty, is the true root of the problem. A horrifying possibility suddenly struck Lee Hoyle. Wait, if someone raids the Count's castle directly, then there's a chance the entire rift could collapse on the spot. Granfell's expression twisted into something so dark and menacing that it sent a shiver straight through him. Granfell placed one hand against the wall, his judgment already made. Count Escura? No. His eyes turned colder. That piece of filth is unworthy of being called by such a noble title. With that merciless verdict delivered, he turned without hesitation and started for the door as though the matter had already been settled. Lee Hoyle did not even have time to grab a coat before Granfell moved. I will personally execute the trash that dares stain the honor of the nobility, Granfell said, radiating such overwhelming arrogance and confidence that Lee Hoyle could not help being impressed in spite of himself. Okay, Lee Hoyle admitted inwardly, almost against his will. That was actually pretty cool, Granfell. But then reality came crashing back in. What about his sleep? He wanted rest more than anything. The door was already open, yet his soft, warm bed felt impossibly far away. Granfell's eyes turned icy as if he had heard the complaint. You may sleep as much as you like once you are dead. The Count's domain carried a recommended level of 350 to 400, a range terrifying enough to keep most sane people away. Standing before the swirling rift, a figure in a fur hat cleared his throat and looked toward the camera. It was Y-Gang, an obscure streamer chasing clout with everything he had, the kind of no-name broadcaster willing to gamble his life for one lucky break. He adjusted his camera, took a breath, and prepared to go live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Undying Resolve channel. It's your boy Y-Gang, bringing you a live Manhwa-level frontline experience. I'm currently broadcasting straight from Russia. The destruction rate of the Count's domain has already reached 70%. We've got less than 5 hours before this rift blows wide open. He glanced at the time and kept talking. It's already 3:48 in the morning, and even now, the major guilds are still gathered here. Despite the brutal hour and freezing cold, Y-Gang was risking everything for the stream. He was fired up, but his chat was merciless. This is boring. There's a reason small streamers stay small. No wonder this guy isn't famous. The mocking comments poured in one after another, but he forced himself to ignore them and kept up the coverage anyway. Unlike the outskirts, which had nearly 200 rifts, the Count's domain only has around 30 entrances, Y-Gang explained, trying to sound professional. That makes this place a massive bottleneck. Because there are so few entry points, multiple guilds are being forced into the same spatial rifts. And since experience points and loot are divided by contribution, choosing the right gate could literally decide life or death. We might actually see the Rank 1 and Rank 2 guilds collide tonight, Y-Gang said, his excitement getting the better of him. He was so caught up in the moment that he failed to notice the gloomy figure standing behind him until the chat exploded. Wait, isn't that Nam Kielman? Y-Gang read the messages and nearly panicked, while Nam Kielman, looking like a walking corpse, weakly muttered, "Hello, everyone." The guild members around him greeted him right away, their voices low but respectful as the tension in the area continued to build. There he is. Nam Tamin turned as soon as he saw him. Hey, Did you scout the area yet? His tone was sharp and impatient. What's the situation? Nam Keelman delivered his report with a grim expression. I checked. A clash is basically unavoidable. There are simply too few rifts. Nam Taemin gave a short nod, though his face stayed hard. As long as we don't run into the Red Dragon Guild, we should still be fine. They were so focused on their discussion that neither of them noticed Waigang crouching behind a rock nearby, reading the chat with growing terror and trying not to make a sound. Wait, hold on, guys, Waigang started, but then a swordsman appeared, his presence so sharp and severe that it felt like the air itself could be cut by it. The sudden pressure made Waigang whirl around in alarm. Nam Taemin recognized the newcomer at once and let out a cold, humorless laugh. Well, look who it is. It's Inazuma. The moment he noticed the streamer, the swordsman gave a faint smirk. So you guys are here too, he said, clearly amused. His voice dripped with open sarcasm. What a coincidence. Guild G just happens to be standing right in front of the rift our side plans to enter. Only then did Waigang fully realize what was happening. The Inazuma Guild had arrived in force, and the atmosphere around the rift instantly turned dangerous. Nam Taemin did not back down for even a second. His gaze turned into something like drawn blades. Still too stubborn to build a branch in Korea? Huh, he shot back. I guess your plane only just landed. Inazuma answered with a mocking smile. Flying to Russia is still better than wasting time building a branch in your territory. That was enough to snap the last thread of Nam Taemin's patience. Do you have a death wish? He spat, his anger finally showing in full. Inazuma looked at him with pure, unhidden contempt. Guild G, he said dismissively, is nothing but small fry. The tension between the two groups thickened until it felt hard to breathe. One wrong word, one wrong move, and a fight would break out on the spot. Waigang was left stunned. Holy crap, this is huge, he thought. Just as he realized he might have stumbled into a once-in-a-lifetime scoop, more people came rushing in while shouting, Guild G and Inazuma are about to throw down. Over there too, the Red Dragon Guild is clashing with the World Unification Guild, someone yelled. It's complete chaos. The entire raid site was turning into a battlefield before anyone had even entered. This was exactly the kind of madness people expected from a top-tier leveling Manhwa scenario. Guild G was on the verge of war with Inazuma, and the entire rift battle had spiraled into insanity. Waigang's face was red from both cold and adrenaline as he shouted into the mic. Please, someone say something. The roar of the surrounding crowd made Nam Keelman and Nam Taemin both turn sharply. Grabbing Nam Taemin's arm, Nam Keelman spoke in fear and urgency. Nam Taemin, I know you're angry, but the rift's destruction rate is the real crisis right now. If our two guilds fight here, then both sides lose. It'll be mutual destruction. Nam Taemin gritted his teeth so hard his jaw visibly tightened, fury blazing in his eyes. Inazuma stood fourth in the rankings, while Guild G was right behind at fifth. That alone made the confrontation feel even heavier. The rivalry between the guild masters ran even deeper. Inazuma ranked sixth individually, while Nam Taemin sat down at 11th. It had all the weight of a dramatic Korea versus Japan showdown. Waigang's running commentary hit a nerve so badly that Nam Keelman looked like he was about to collapse from secondhand stress. Shut up, Nam Taemin barked in irritation. Then he called out, Nam Keelman, but Nam Keelman cut him off before he could keep going. Fine, we were here first, but if we back down now, we lose face. Then let's crush them, Nam Keelman said with a smile that looked almost manic under the pressure of the moment. Nam Taemin was ready to go all the way. As long as we win, nothing else matters. Charge. And with that, Guild G and Inazuma plunged into the Eastern Rift together. The conflict between them now carried straight into the heart of the raid. Reporter AA announced in a raised, urgent voice that the two rival guilds had entered the very same instance. The moment those words went out, the atmosphere around the broadcast sharpened, because everyone knew this was no ordinary development. These two guilds are legendary rivals, the commentators stressed, and dozens of drones immediately swarmed overhead to capture every possible angle. Their cameras buzzed through the air like metal insects chasing history in real time. Guild G from Korea, Inazuma from Japan. The collision of rankings, pride, and national identity instantly drew the eyes of the entire world. It was more than a raid now. It had become a spectacle people could not look away from. Nam Taemin and Inazuma each took the lead at the front of their forces, charging ahead without hesitation. Neither man looked willing to give even a single step to the other. At the same time, at the Northern Rift, the #1 ranked Red Dragon Guild and the world's #2 World Unification Guild were facing each other in open hostility. In the south, the Berserker Guild at rank 30, Second Son at rank 7, and the Nomad Guild at rank 3 had all gathered as well, turning every front into a powder keg. With the destruction rate climbing to 80%, the whole world seemed to stop and hold its breath. Fear spread far beyond the battlefield, because everyone understood that one wrong move could turn this raid into a catastrophe. And yet, in the middle of that apocalyptic chaos, Lee Hoyle sat there with perfect composure, elegantly sipping tea, as if he were some highborn noble attending a quiet afternoon gathering instead of a life-or-death raid. The gentle aroma of tea and his calm, unshaken posture painted a picture of absolute serenity. But inside the Count's rift, Lee Hoyle sat with his teacup in hand, his thoughts running deep beneath that quiet surface. The one thing I learned from the last rift, he thought, his eyes narrowing slightly, is that running out of mana is basically a death sentence. So this time, I need to find the most efficient possible way to use mana in a war like this. It was no longer just about power. It was about control, survival, and waste-free execution. The answer, he concluded, lies in magic derived from alchemy. With that kind of magic, he could reshape reality itself and force matter into whatever form he desired, at least in theory. Step 1, he muttered inwardly. I used a few loose rocks from the ground and transmuted them into a teacup and a table. It worked cleanly enough, but the lesson was immediate. The more detailed and complex the object became, the more mana the process devoured. That meant using it to create complicated battle constructs on the fly was inefficient. It was flashy, sure, but it simply wasn't practical for the kind of fight he expected here. It's basically trying too hard, Lee Hoyle admitted to himself as he recognized the flaw in his own thinking. But just as that realization settled in, a fresh idea began to form. So absorbed in thought was he that he barely noticed Count Escura's soldiers closing in around him. They stared at him with hungry, hostile eyes, like predators convinced they had found easy prey standing alone in the ruins. Lee Hoyle glanced at them and spoke in a cool, almost disappointed tone. Is that really all the power the Count gave you? Then he slowly turned toward them, his full attention focusing on the approaching enemies. The shift in his gaze alone was enough to make the moment feel heavier. How pitiful, he said, and there was not even a trace of strain in his voice, only calm contempt. A magic circle unfolded beneath him as he prepared to erase them all with a single move. The monsters did not even have time to react properly before fear overtook them, and they let out shrill, panicked screams. It was not a flashy chant or some long dramatic incantation. It came out more like an absolute command, cold and undeniable. Return to dust. Lee Hoyle's eyes turned sharp as cold steel the instant he struck. Under that power, the monsters were forced backward into their original state, as if existence itself were being rewound. The impact was so overwhelming that even the nearby cliff shattered apart, yet the technique had consumed almost no mana at all. Regression, Lee Hoyle decided, giving the power a name. Then he shook his head with a long, weary sigh. Did we really need to give it such a dramatic, flowery name? He muttered, sounding far less impressed with the title than the skill itself. Elsewhere, the battlefield had already turned into a chaotic mess of violence and destruction. The deeper the guilds pushed in, the more unstable everything around them began to feel. Nam Taemin's squad had just finished cutting down the monsters in their path, but instead of feeling relieved, he fell into uneasy thought. Something about this entire area felt deeply wrong. There are way too few of them, he said, his suspicion growing stronger by the second. I only killed a handful of stragglers on the way here. The lack of resistance made no sense at all. In a place this dangerous, that kind of emptiness was far more disturbing than a normal battle. Suddenly, a voice broke through his concentration. Guild Master, I've scouted the perimeter. The shout snapped everyone's attention back to the immediate situation. The green-haired scout, her beauty almost at odds with the grim report she carried, spoke quickly. Inazuma's side is seeing the same thing. I don't think they've killed even 10 beasts since entering. She frowned. We started at the same time and moved in opposite directions, but both guilds have barely encountered anything. Doesn't that feel wrong to you too? Does that make any sense? The team asked as they argued it out in tense, clipped voices. But before they could dig deeper into it, a group began approaching from the other side. Inazuma, someone called out. Nam Taemin turned immediately at the sound, his expression hardening at once. Inazuma smirked the moment their eyes met. Awfully peaceful around here, isn't it? He said, his tone almost teasing, as though he were enjoying the strange tension. The girl on Nam Taemin's team frowned in suspicion. Were they tracking us? She whispered. Nam Taemin's temper flared instantly. Why do you keep acting like we're friends? He snapped, clearly done entertaining even the slightest familiarity. Inazuma did not look intimidated in the least. I honestly don't get why Taemin hates me this much, he said with a mocking shrug. What? Does he seriously want to kill me or something? Is that it? Nam Taemin shot back, looking fully ready to throw hands on the spot. The air between them turned so sharp it felt ready to split. Then a voice suddenly crackled through the Bluetooth. Taemin, are you there? Nam Keelman's breathless voice came through the device, tense and urgent. Nam Taemin turned away just enough to take the call. I've almost finished analyzing the dungeon structure, Nam Keelman said rapidly. Where are you right now? The video feed isn't working. Nam Taemin glanced around and answered. I'm in some kind of ruins. It looks like a city square, I guess. The answer instantly changed the tone on the other end. You don't know your exact location? Nam Keelman's voice spiked with panic. A square? The city square. Yeah. What? Nam Taemin still had not grasped the scale of the danger. Then Nam Keelman screamed through the line, his voice breaking. Get out of there right now. Before Nam Taemin could even process that warning, a violent gale erupted across the area and kicked up a blinding storm of dust and debris. Nam Taemin froze the moment shapes emerged through the dust. The sight in front of him made his entire body lock up. They were the Count's Knights, level 350 aura users, mounted and armed, their presence alone crushing the air around them. These were not ordinary soldiers filling out the ranks. One look was enough to understand that much. They were elite knights, the kind of enemies meant to wipe out entire teams. Someone nearby cursed in horror. Not just soldiers, level 350 knights. We are completely screwed. We're surrounded. Panic finally burst through the line. Nam Taemin roared. Everyone, battle positions. Prepare for impact. But even as he gave the order, his heart was pounding with raw anxiety. Damn it, he thought, reading the terrain in an instant. On an open plain like this, the destructive force of a cavalry charge multiplies tenfold. Even if Harkon took the front line, the damage would be fatal the moment that charge connected. What do we do now? The question barely left someone's mouth when Inazuma, standing just behind him, suddenly spoke. Listen, Taemin. I hate this plan too, but cover my back. And at that exact moment, a desperate scream ripped through the air. Guild Master. Enemies approaching from the rear. The warning came too late to be comforting and too loud to ignore. A horde of monsters came charging toward them at terrifying speed. Oh God, someone whispered. Enemies on every side. The trap was closing fast. Panic started to spread as the ring of beasts tightened around them. Even if they had somehow grown wings, there was no escaping this formation. Taemin, are you listening? Nam Keelman shouted through the comms. The World Unification Guild took massive casualties from a cavalry ambush exactly like this. Do not fight them on the open plains. Retreat and lure them into a narrow alley. That warning finally dragged Nam Taemin's scattered thoughts back into focus. Retreat. Nam Taemin ordered at last, though even saying the word felt bitter in his mouth. Staring at the wall of monsters closing in from every direction, he felt a rare moment of helplessness. Retreat to where? He thought, seeing no opening at all. And then, without warning, a massive magic circle erupted out of nowhere and detonated across the battlefield around Nam Taemin, devastating everything in its reach. Nam Taemin and Inazuma both went completely still, rooted to the spot in naked shock. For one suspended moment, neither of them could even process what they had just witnessed unfolding right in front of their eyes. The spell tore through the battlefield with overwhelming force and annihilated the monsters in an instant. What had been a desperate killing field only seconds ago was suddenly crushed under a single, absurdly powerful intervention. As their senses slowly returned, Nam Taemin could not stop the curse that slipped out of his mouth. The scene was so unreal, so far beyond expectation, that anger and disbelief came out mixed together. What the hell was that? He muttered in stunned disbelief. A stone wall? No, wait. Is that a pillar? Everyone stared in awe at the impossible sight in front of them, while the trapped monsters let out agonized screams, their bodies being crushed between the rising stone structures. Nam Taemin was left speechless. Then, through the drifting dust and broken debris, a lone silhouette slowly emerged, and the entire group turned their heads toward it at the same exact moment. Watching remotely through a screen, Nam Keelman gasped and leaned forward in disbelief. That person, it has to be, he whispered. But even as the thought formed, he rejected it himself. No, that's impossible. Meanwhile, Nam Taemin's group did not recognize the newcomer at all. He simply stood there in cold silence, arrogant and composed, without offering a name, an explanation, or even the slightest courtesy of an introduction. Someone in the group lowered their voice and whispered uncertainly, "Is that Lee Hoyle?" The name drifted through the air like a dangerous guess no one was ready to confirm. At last, the man shifted his gaze toward them. But just as the tension reached its peak, a completely different voice cut through the atmosphere with cheerful, misplaced energy. "Yes, hello everyone. It's Gang here." The bright tone was so absurdly out of place that it almost felt surreal against the grim battlefield. Gang, still obsessed with capturing the best leveling manhwa content live, had crouched down beside a rock while continuing his stream. "Sorry, viewers," he whispered excitedly. "Nature called, so I'm a little late. But don't worry, I'm back. I'll keep tracking Guild G from here." Look at this," he said, lowering the camera toward the ground. "These footprints belong to them. Judging from the shape and the snow, these tracks are only about 5 minutes old." The moment he said that, the chat window exploded with sarcastic, mocking comments. "What? Really? For real?" Gang muttered while reading the flood of reactions. Realizing his viewers wanted something more exciting, he instantly decided to change targets and chase the better story to boost his numbers. A grin spread across his face, excitement shining all over it. "You guys already know who's worth watching," he said. "I'm switching targets. I'm tracking Inazuma instead." But before he could say another word, a deafening boom shook the air so hard it sent cold sweat running down his back. His viewers immediately lost their minds in chat and started screaming at him to go check the source of the explosion. The feed filled with demands, panic, and pure hype all at once. All right, Gang blurted out, trying to keep his voice down while still sounding brave for the camera. I'm going. Meanwhile, back at the actual battlefield, Nam Taemin and Inazuma still stood there half-paralyzed, unable to fully accept what their eyes were showing them. As the scene continued unfolding before them, stone pillars kept erupting from one end of the battlefield to the other. They rose violently from the ground like the land itself had turned hostile and chosen a side. Inazuma could not help stealing another glance toward Lee Hoyle. The man's calmness in the middle of all this felt even more unsettling than the magic itself. Who is that guy? Inazuma wondered in disbelief. He pulled off something like this without chanting a single spell. The more he thought about it, the less normal it seemed. How much mana does he even have? Inazuma thought, still staring. And seriously, a suit and dress shoes? He didn't even bother bringing a weapon. Everything about the man felt absurd in the worst possible way. Looking at Lee Hoyle, whose expression remained terrifyingly calm from beginning to end, Inazuma felt a chill crawl up his spine. Who the hell is he? Was the only thought left in his head. That cold shiver of fear was broken when one of his team members shouted from nearby, snapping him back to reality. "Guild Master, the enemy is trapped between the pillars." Even then, the monsters did not stop. If anything, they came in even greater numbers, surging forward with reckless violence as though sheer madness had replaced their instincts. Nam Taemin sucked in a sharp breath. The sudden reversal in the battlefield made his chest tighten with equal parts shock and opportunity. The words barely left him. The stone pillars had completely cut off the horse's momentum, halting the cavalry dead where it mattered most and destroying the charge that should have crushed them. Nam Tamin raised a hand and covered part of his face, hiding the storm of emotion twisting inside him. Then, in a low voice meant only for Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo, he muttered his next words. "I'll thank you later." The instant he said it, his expression twisted into a fierce, threatening scowl, all hesitation burning away and leaving only battle hunger behind. "With those stone pillars in place," he declared, "this battle is ours to win." The confidence in his voice returned all at once, harder and sharper than before. Without wasting another second, Nam Tamin launched himself straight into the stalled cavalry line. He moved like a man trying to carve his frustration and pride directly into the enemy. His blade flashed, and he cut them down one after another, cleaving through armored enemies and dropping them where they stood. The opening created by the pillars had turned into a slaughter zone. Inazuma's group did not hesitate either once they understood the situation. "This is our chance," they shouted, immediately rushing forward to capitalize on the opening. "Kill them all." The fighters roared with renewed spirit, their morale exploding upward as they dove headfirst into the bloodbath with ferocious energy. Watching the whole scene through his livestream, Wygang's jaw dropped so hard it nearly looked painful. Even for a clout chaser like him, this was way beyond anything he had hoped to catch on camera. "What just happened?" he blurted out at full volume. "That support was god tier. Is that guy a mage?" The instant Granfell appeared in frame, the chat section completely went nuclear. At the same time, one fearless monster lunged straight at Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo, as if death meant nothing to it. Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo did not even break a sweat. With effortless precision, he cut the creature down as if dealing with something beneath even mild annoyance. "Regression magic," Wygang muttered in disbelief. "He's taking on that cavalry unit by himself." The words barely captured how insane the sight actually was. This was exactly the kind of Manhwa recap moment the internet lived for. Wygang stood there stunned, almost trembling from adrenaline. "Can you guys see this clearly?" he shouted at his viewers. "I don't even know if what I'm looking at right now is real." Granfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo stared at the monsters with eyes as cold and hard as steel. There was no excitement in his gaze, no cruelty, not even anger, just absolute judgment. He tightened his grip on the dagger in his hand and watched the monster in front of him draw its final breath. Even in the middle of combat, his mind was calmly weighing options instead of getting lost in the battle. "I don't want to waste the durability of this weapon," he thought with total seriousness. Of course, the viewers had no clue what was really on his mind and assumed he was simply savoring the thrill of the kill. "What if I interfere with the mana inside this dagger, transform it, and then use regression on it?" he considered, his thoughts moving faster than anyone around him could possibly guess. "If that works, then the durability should return to its original state too, shouldn't it?" The idea was so practical and absurdly specific that it almost felt detached from the battlefield entirely. "When I turned a stone into a teacup, it gained the durability of a cup," he reasoned. "And when I use regression to return it to its original state, it becomes a stone again, stripped of those altered properties and any added stats." If the spell return to original state really does revert an object to its true base form, then it should be possible. Before the thought fully ended, blood sprayed into the air from another kill. Return to original state. Granfell felt genuine satisfaction at the result. Finally, this was a victory that did not threaten to bury him in outrageous repair costs afterward. Not far away, Nam Tamin glanced over, and his commanding voice rang out across the battlefield. "Excellent work. You all fought beautifully," he shouted to his squad. Then his tone sharpened with battle-high excitement. "Now go wild. It's looting time." The squad members burst into cheers at once, celebrating not just the loot, but the simple fact that they had survived the trap. And yet Nam Tamin himself remained where he stood, still and silent like a statue. Meanwhile, Granfell looked absurdly relaxed, as if he existed in a different genre entirely. In the middle of that ruined, chaotic battlefield, he calmly sipped a cup of tea manifested out of thin air. From the other side, Nam Keelman's voice called out, "Hey, Nam Tamin." But before Nam Keelman could finish, Nam Tamin cut him off in a sharp, controlled voice. I know, he said. I heard everything he said earlier. Now that I have finally seen him fight with my own eyes, my resolve has only grown stronger and sharper. There is no way I can let someone like him be taken by another guild, especially after the Inzuma guild witnessed the whole scene from start to finish. They are probably calculating their offer already, weighing numbers and advantages in their heads this very moment. Then, without warning, a voice suddenly cut through Granfell's quiet tea time and broke the calm. Excuse me. Hello, I'm from Y-Gang. At that awkward introduction, Granfell's brow immediately pulled tight, his irritation showing plainly, as if the interruption alone had offended him. Could I interview you for just a moment? The reporter asked carefully, only to be answered by a stare so cold and sharp it felt like it could freeze even magma solid. The livestream comment section instantly erupted, with viewers losing their minds over Granfell's terrifyingly icy expression. And then, as if they had been waiting for the perfect chance, a whole swarm of excited fans suddenly rushed in from nowhere, their faces red with thrill and their eyes shining wildly. Ah, there he is. They completely ignored Yang, shoving the poor reporter aside without the slightest hesitation. Then they crowded around Granfell, praising him non-stop and firing questions at him like a machine gun. You're incredible. Are you Korean or Japanese? Are you already part of a guild? If not, please come to the Inzuma Guild. Did you clear it alone? What's your name? In the middle of the chaos, Nam Tamon stepped forward like a human tank and blocked them off. Back off. Then she turned and gave Granfell a calm, reassuring smile. Greetings. I've heard quite a few rumors about you already. Her tone was polite, but there was a clear purpose behind it. I am Nam Tam Man from the John Guild. I actually sent you a recruitment message earlier. But Granfell did not even blink at her introduction. Without the slightest change in expression, he answered with one short line so brutal it crushed the mood on the spot. You truly have no sense of etiquette. Nam Tam Man went completely still, and behind her, the crowd drew in a shocked breath all at once, stunned by how mercilessly direct he was. That reply was like a bomb that had been ticking quietly before finally going off in everyone's face. Therefore, I will not answer a single question, he said, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Get out of my sight immediately. The air turned painfully cold in an instant, and the viewers watching this leveling and mana-style drama unfold in real time went absolutely insane with excitement. Look at him. He's so cool. The reaction online exploded almost immediately, and Granfell and Locke shot straight into the trending search rankings under the headline, Mr. Mysterious Player Rejects Interview Over Rude Behavior. At the same time, the Sin Guild, the first group to clear the Count's domain, had finally settled down and was taking a moment to rest after the intense battle. Inside the stronghold they had just exited, they were gathered together watching the news coverage, their attention fixed on the broadcast as the outside world reacted to everything that had happened. Locke sat there carefully reviewing the footage of the monster subjugation, replaying key moments with the look of someone trying to understand far more than what appeared on the surface. After a long moment, he turned toward his elite members and asked in a low, measured voice, "What is it? What do all of you think about this?" Camila gave an easy shrug, looking completely unbothered. "I don't really care. Who knows? I'm just an archer, after all." Then Dick started whining at full volume. "You could ask me 100 times, and I still wouldn't know. Locke, a famous star like you could never understand the suffering of an ordinary guy like me. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to set up this date? And now it's being ruined by a meeting that's dragged on for hours. Am I really supposed to throw away my golden chance at romance because of some random guy?" Even while Dick complained endlessly, Locke ignored him and remained deep in thought. Granfell's image flashed brightly on the screen again, drawing everyone's eyes back to the footage as his presence seemed to dominate the room all over again. Camila let out a whistle right away, openly admiring what she saw. "He's handsome, isn't he? So why hesitate? Just bring him in already." Still sounding salty, Dimitri pointed accusingly at Lockhatch. "I knew it. You're jealous of him, aren't you?" he said. "You thought everyone would still be talking about clearing the Count's domain, but instead they're all busy gossiping about this new pretty boy." Locke gave a scoff full of disbelief. "Jealous? They're still going on about that." He brushed it off, saying, "We're getting plenty of attention too. The captain is just ambitious." Then he sighed and added, The media always blow things up. It's standard procedure. They do it to boost their ratings, nothing more. Anyway, if there's nothing else to discuss, I'm leaving. He stood up as if he had already made up his mind. I rented out an entire hotel lounge for this date, and I really can't keep waiting any longer. I'm out. With that, the man hurried out of the conference room in a rush, already grinning as he pulled out his phone and happily called his girlfriend. Hello, baby. I'm on my way now. His voice was suddenly sweet and bright, completely different from how he had sounded only moments ago. Locke stayed behind, still replaying Granville's video over and over as if something about it would not leave his mind. Then, from behind him, a voice suddenly gasped in open amazement. What is this? Wow, that's a divine skill. It looks like magic at first glance, but something about it is clearly different. It was Hay. Locke glanced back at her and asked at once, Do you know something about divine skills? Hay kept her eyes fixed on the screen, and a soft, intrigued smile slowly spread across her face, sweet and curious at the same time, as if she had just found something genuinely fascinating. Interesting. That person. Meanwhile, over at the Berserker Guild headquarters, everyone had been left speechless by the footage. In a burst of excitement, Lucy grabbed a blanket and hurled it at the man sitting next to her with all her strength. What did I tell you? She shouted with blazing confidence. I told you from the start that he wasn't normal. The man beside her let out a tired sigh. But what are you even saying, sister? Calm down already, and pull that blanket back over yourself, or you'll catch a cold. Then came the sharp reply. Are you blind? I've had it on this whole time. The Inazuma Guild was no different. They were in total chaos too, frantically making calls one after another. That silver-haired guy. We have to recruit him to our side no matter what it takes. Orders received. The response came back immediately, crisp and obedient, as the guild moved without delay. Then the anchor of Akena News began her report in a polished voice. Greetings to everyone watching Akena today. We are currently seeing a record-breaking number of viewers tune in to this broadcast. The Count's domain has now been cleared, followed by the outer regions. Within that domain, the Sin Guild and Underworld were locked in a fierce clash, but through overwhelming strength, Sin has secured the top position. At this point, only the Count's fortress remains. The current destruction rate has reached 72%, and players from all across the world are now gathering at this site in ever-increasing numbers. The rift is now on the edge of collapse, and because of that, the situation has become extremely dangerous and unbelievably tense. If the fortress rift fails to hold, then we may as well say goodbye to Russia. The anchor's words carried the full weight of the crisis. Good luck to everyone. Granville was quietly checking his status window when the reporter's voice suddenly sliced through his focus and pulled his attention away from it. In the middle of the Today's Player update, his own face unexpectedly appeared on the giant screen, blown up large for the entire area to see. Take a look at this. He carries no weapons at all, and he's dressed only in a suit and a long trench coat. He truly appears to be wearing no visible armor and no accessories either. Could he be using some hidden monogar that we simply cannot detect? Or is he so overwhelmingly powerful that clearing a rift is effortless enough for him to have no real need for equipment at all? Watching this, Li Hoi felt his face burn hot with embarrassment as the exaggerated analysis continued to pile up around him. The truth is, I just don't have any money to buy gear, he thought bitterly, a lot less heroic than the reporters clearly imagined. But the reporters kept going with bright, excited voices. He destroyed the enemy with a single snap of his fingers. Is something like that even possible? One of them said. Let's hear from expert Bei Nambon. The expert began his analysis with complete seriousness. The situation was already critical before his arrival. The enemy had superior mobility, so he changed the terrain itself in order to counter them. That split-second judgment saved both John and Inazuma. But the real truth behind it was known only to Li Hoi. I only did the one thing I could do at that moment. And after that, he simply stood back and watched. It was as if he generously handed the spotlight to John and Inazuma, saying, Now it's your turn to shine. Who else could show such composure and confidence? He is truly magnificent. Hearing that, Li Hoi slumped in despair and thought, I was just out of mana, you idiots. Honestly, it felt like a miracle. At the very least, Nobody had gone on television and called him an idiot for just standing there doing nothing. No matter what anyone said, the loot he had picked up was still something rare and unusual. It was the very first item he had ever obtained since becoming a player, and of all things, it was a cursed item, better known to most people as a demon item. Once the curse is removed, the item releases a completely random effect. In other words, it is nothing more than a gamble dressed up as treasure. Most players would throw something like that away on the spot. In most cases, it is far more profitable to hunt for a new item than to waste money paying for curse removal. Still, there was a much more efficient and meaningful way to make use of a cursed object, and that was through an exorcism ritual rather than simple purification. That technique was one of the two special privilege skills possessed only by a demon hunter, which made it far more valuable than it first appeared. If he used the item as a sacrificial offering, the power of exorcism would activate and strike the demon itself directly, all without causing even the slightest damage to the host's body. Using a medium like that was basically the same as cracking open a door that led straight down into the abyss. The moment you do that, you are inviting the demon directly into your soul. It becomes a brutal gamble over who controls whom. But if I can drag that monster into my own mental landscape, then the fight shifts to my ground, and that battlefield becomes mine. Just then, Taemin's name suddenly flashed across the screen. Li Hoya froze the instant he saw it. Why would he be calling right now, of all times? In a split second, 1,000 horrible scenarios rushed through his head like the beginning of a disaster movie. Could it be this? How dare you disgrace the honor of the John Guild? The possibility alone made his stomach tighten with dread. I'll see you in court. Even the thought of hearing those words made his blood run cold. Grandfell, Claudia Arpeggio, Romeo answered the phone, but Li Hoya's own hand was already damp and slick with nervous sweat. No, this is bad. If Grandfell, Claudio, Arpeggio, Romeo says even one wrong thing, it could turn into an all-out war between sides. I have to step in before that happens, and I have to do it fast. Just send something polite. Simple, respectful, harmless. Please have mercy. Please don't sue us. That sounds polite enough, right? At least it should not make things worse. Nam Chan Min and Tom Min stared at the message with their jaws practically hitting the floor, completely dumbfounded. What is this? A lawsuit? The whole thing felt bizarrely familiar, like they were being dragged into the exact same nightmare all over again. In the end, all they could do was let out a long, defeated sigh. The rift had not even been cleared yet, and somehow things were already spiraling into another mess. Taemin's thoughts ran wild. He had only wanted to apologize properly for the disrespect from earlier and offer suitable compensation, but the moment he saw the chat logs, he was left completely speechless. Around them, the crowd kept buzzing loudly, chaotic and restless like a packed fish market. People leaned in and whispered among themselves, unable to hide their curiosity. Look at his eyes, they murmured. He's absolutely furious. The rumor spread through the crowd in an instant, each whisper making the tension feel heavier. But in truth, Grandfell Claudia Arpeggio Romeo's sharp, piercing glare had nothing to do with anger at all. He was simply exhausted, worn down by severe mana depletion, and his face only looked that severe because he was running on empty. Taemin looked down at his silent phone with growing frustration. We can't negotiate anything if he won't even pick up. Then his attention shifted back to the status report on Count Oscura's domain. Destruction at 83%. Good. Take a 10-minute breather. For one brief moment, it felt like they had enough room to breathe. But fate, as always, had something far worse waiting for them.